Hello, everyone. Welcome to Head in the Clouds. This is your host, Claudia. So, I hope you guys are doing well. Today, I am joined by my good friend, Adele. We're talking about ethnicity, the nuances of being Chinese. We're obviously speaking from our own experiences, so definitely be sure to remember that we're not speaking for like entire communities, obviously. But yeah, I hope it's interesting, intriguing, informative, or, just fun to listen to, really. Yeah, I actually wanted to wish Adele happy birthday. Her birthday is coming up really, really soon by the time that I post this. So thank you so much for joining this episode, Adele, and I really appreciate having you in my life. For anyone who has any comments, you can leave us a review if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, or you can find us on Instagram at the Head in the Clouds Show. The S does not repeat, or the Head in the Clouds Show.wordpress.com for additional links or show notes. Speaking of links, I would like to direct your attention to Adele's podcast as well. It's called Grandma Do Talks. It's introspective and kind of talks about mental health and just like self-improvement, self-help, introspective kind of stuff. I think it's definitely something that can help you work through your own thoughts. So please do check that one out. So happy that you guys are here for this episode, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4. Today I have my good friend Adele with me. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, awkwardly waving. Hi everyone, my name's Adele. Well, actually, my real name isn't Adele. I guess my Chinese name is Yumon. But everybody knows me by Adele. And yeah, I'm one of Claudia's best friends in the zoo. Yeah, funny story. I think we met literally first week of college, at least for
Yes.
me. That's how I remembered.
Definitely. Yeah, we had a class together. And then we like planned like a hangout, and then like we just, yeah, it was good vibes.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
live really close because like
True.
nobody lived. Well, at least like I didn't really know anybody who lived in my dorm.
Yeah, so like I was telling Adele earlier, the topic that we're gonna explore today is the nuances and the details about being quote unquote Chinese, because the Chinese population in the world is definitely like a lot, like not just in China, but like all around the world, because like I believe it's China and India that has like the most diaspora around
Yeah.
the world. Yeah, so as you would know, I'm from Malaysia. I'm Chinese Malaysian. But before like I went to the US, like I think a lot of people who are Chinese would identify themselves more strongly as like, oh yeah, I'm Chinese, when they're talking to people. And
Mhm.
I feel like I more closely kind of related to my Malaysian side after I went overseas, because I realized, oh, like it's actually quite a different experience from people who are from China, like yourself. So I just wanted to talk about that. Like I said,
Yeah.
like growing up, I always say like, oh, I'm Chinese, blah, blah, blah. But for you, like, do you or the people you know in mainland China often like talk about or study or, just like have any conversations about the Chinese, like overseas Chinese people?
I think that's a kind of big question. So I guess I'll first like introduce myself. So I am 100% Chinese. Like my nationality is Chinese and my ethnicity is Chinese. Grew up in China. Um, and before I met Claudia, really, I think you were one of the first one I met at college. Because before I really didn't thought about it, because I think when I first knew you, I just thought you as like Malaysian. Like I didn't really thought about your like the Chinese part of your identity. But it's really interesting that you brought up that like in Malaysia, I think you're more purpose like as I'm a Chinese because I think that's just how different our countries are. Kind of like here in the US too, like people talk a lot about their race, like maybe like I'm African American or I am like Japanese or just throwing terms.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely like I think back home, like we don't really have that like multi like using the wrong term, but multi race
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
society. Like most like I want to say like majority of us are like Chinese, our nationality and ethnicity are Chinese. So I guess like growing up, the most I've learned is maybe like ABC, which is like American born Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
or Australian born Chinese. And whenever I think about those terms, I just think that we had a really bad terminology growing up. It's like banana, which is it's really
Yes.
bad.
Right. We
Literally
do
means
as well. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you're yellow on the side and white inside. So like obviously that's not true for everyone. Like I have family members who are like ABC, and I think when she was younger, like I definitely remember like she didn't really want to speak Chinese because she
Mm-hmm.
went to an international school. And the main language there is spoken is English, and she can speak Mandarin, which is like Chinese, but I think she wasn't really confident in it because it wasn't her like primary language, I guess. So like she wouldn't really want to speak Chinese. And I just remember as a child, I was kind of offended. I was like, because my English wasn't that great, and I feel like, oh, maybe she thinks she's like superior
Mm-hmm.
than us. Or maybe I did think like she didn't really want to talk to us because like we don't speak English. Um, so yeah, but I guess I didn't really have any friends who were in your situation until
Mm-hmm.
college.
Right.
So yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So do you think like most people then in China, like are they aware of like the Chinese diaspora in like Singapore, for example, or Malaysia, Indonesia even, like all throughout Asia? Like do you think like are they mostly aware of it, just like not really know what the specific details are?
Um, Honestly, I think that's a really case by case scenario, and I can only speak for myself because I
Right.
think it's kind of depends. I think where you live in China, and also I feel like some family just have more like family members who are overseas. So I think growing up, I sort of know like the history. Like there's a lot of like Chinese overseas, like in like Singapore, like Malaysia, Indonesia. And then also like I don't know how I remember this, but I know there's a lot of them in Europe, like Italy or Spain. That like I just find it really interesting because I know them really, so they can speak like fluent Spanish and like
Right.
Chinese. Like
Yeah.
that was really cool. Um, but I guess for me, like growing up, I just don't have a lot of like interaction with them. Like I didn't have any family members who were like that. But I think if you go to some from like more, some people call Shanghai the southern part of China.
Hmm.
Some would argue it's the north part, which I think is really interesting. Like I think we're literally in the middle
Yeah.
and more towards the south. But I feel like if you're from like Fujian or Guangdong, which is like very southern part of
Yes.
China, there's definitely a lot more people who know or have someone in their family who lives in like
Mm-hmm.
Singapore, like Indonesia,
Yeah.
Malaysia, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would say like for me, like not really.
Yeah. But when you were speaking about that, it reminded me that kind of like one of like the first things that we talked about that I thought was so interesting. Do you remember like you told me about that TV show about the Nyanger and stuff like that?
Yeah,
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 which I think is so
mhm,
interesting. Do you
yeah.
remember what it was about?
It's so funny. I actually recently rewatched that.
Really? Oh my
It's on
gosh.
Netflix. I
Oh
forgot.
wow.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's a really. Apparently, it was like one of the most popular TV shows ever in
Mm.
Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched it when I was really young. And okay, so it's called Samyang. I don't know what it is in English,
Mm-hmm.
but some of the stories in it is a little bit dramatic, not gonna lie. Like
Yeah.
the story plot is kind of crazy.
When you were younger, where did you watch that from? Like just on TV, like broadcast?
Yeah, so I think there was a local TV channel. This is when I was really young, probably like late elementary or early middle school. But I watched a lot of TV back then, and there was one channel that just played TV shows all day. And then typically they played a lot of like TV shows from Hong Kong or
Mm,
Thailand. But I
right.
think that TV show, like Summer, was so popular, so they also played that. And I was very addicted to the show because you have to watch it. It's honestly, it's very dramatic, but also it's
Mm-hmm.
honestly pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if the TV show explains like fully what like Nyanger is.
Sort of, but I was watching on YouTube and there was literally people in the comments were very like kind of aggressive about it. They're like,
Really?
"This is not true, not." because isn't Mandarin like I don't know. I don't want to try to explain it, but I think
Right.
it's like kind of a complex term, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a culture really these days, but I'm pretty sure because like my grandma, she grew up in that culture. So in English, like younger is like Nyonya. So it's like Baba Nyonya. Baba is like the men and Nyonya is like the women. So it kind of comes from like a long time ago when the more of like the noble type of like Chinese people came with
Mm-hmm.
probably like, a lot of like their laborers or anything like that. But they came, they settled down here. Baba Nyonya is kind of like the culture that comes from the mix between, like local Malays and like natives with like
Mm-hmm.
Chinese people. I'm from Malacca, so the Malaccan Straits, like they settled there a lot as well. So there's a lot of like Baba
Mm-hmm.
Nyonya culture there. So like my grandma was kind of grew up in that. We also call it like Peranakan culture. Yeah. So since we're on that topic, pop quiz time.
Oh my gosh.
How? Yeah. Like
Yay.
how many percentage or like number of people of Chinese descent do you think is in Malaysia?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna take a wild guess.
No, it's okay. It's not like a serious
Uh,
question. It's just kind of like a little
I would
segue.
say like 15%.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a pretty good guess. I'm pretty sure right now it's 20 something, so 20 something percent. So like it's not that far off. I believe there's about 7 million of us here. So I read recently, when I was doing research that I think we're one of like the biggest Chinese diaspora in the world. The US, I think, has like 5 million Chinese people or like people
Mm-hmm.
who, identify as Chinese.
Right.
So I thought that was like pretty interesting because, like I said, I think a lot, like a majority of us, because obviously we're in Malaysia, we're not going to introduce ourselves as Malaysian, right? Of course, we're going to find the part of us that's like, I don't know, like identifiable. Like I'm sure if you're like talking to someone else
Mm-hmm.
from China, you'd be like, "Oh, I'm from Shanghai," because like that's like the part of
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's like how we would kind of introduce ourselves. And like I said, I only started seeing myself as more Malaysian when I went to the US. But still, to me personally, it was pretty clear that like to me I thought it was pretty clear that like oh yeah of course like I'm Chinese and stuff like that, but I don't know, like to you, like did I come off as like someone who was like Chinese to you? I don't know, like someone from like one of the Chinese international students I met in the US did like comment on my
Mm-hmm.
Chinese New Year post, and she was like, I didn't know you spoke Chinese, and I was like, I am Chinese.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't know you speak Chinese until like I don't know when, but it was definitely not when we first met. But I think I also just made assumption that you didn't speak Chinese because you just said you were from Malaysia, and I was like, okay, then I guess you speak English. But I think it's a really tricky thing because again, like as I
Mm-hmm.
said, I think for you like for me, like that's my nationality and
Yeah.
ethnicity, but I think for you it's a bit different. Like you're Malaysian, that's your nationality, but then you also have that like Chinese culture like rooted in you, like that's where your family was from, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of hard to say. I think cultural wise, I was actually really surprised by like because I think even like in China, maybe, again that's different as family, but I definitely don't think my family like don't have a really big family. Like we don't live with our grandparents, so like for Chinese New Year, it's typically just my parents and I,
Mm.
and we don't do a lot of like Chinese New Year traditions. So when I think we were talking and you were like showing me pictures of what your parents and grandma was doing back home, I thought it was really
Right.
cute because I definitely like kind of wish that like we did more growing up because like
Mm-hmm.
we just did it more secular. Is that the right way? No,
No,
we
yeah,
didn't
for
really go
sure.
all out for like Chinese New Year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the costumes were slightly different too. Like,
Right.
I don't know what it is. What is it called? But you guys do the thing where the dish, like
Oh,
you use
the
the chopstick.
Lao Shang
No,
thing.
no, yeah, we don't. I don't even do that in Mainland.
Yes,
And
yes,
I
yes,
was
yeah.
actually watching another YouTuber. She's like Chinese, but like her mainland, and she like lives in Singapore right now. So they also do that there.
Mm.
So yeah, I was like, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like how would I say like how Chinese you? I don't think that it's different,
Yeah, for
definitely.
sure.
But I don't know. I guess I just really appreciate like I I think because I also was watching some like YouTuber like in Malaysia. I don't know how like YouTube algorithm maybe got me there. But they were saying that like there are a lot of Chinese Malaysians in Malaysia who had like Chinese schools, and they really
Mm-hmm.
try to like I guess inherit that
Yeah.
tradition to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that then even though they might be in Malaysian for generations, but they want to make sure that they don't forget about those
Yeah.
Chinese customs. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I think there's definitely like a big distinction that is between Chinese as like a culture, like culturally, like ethnicity wise, versus like, of course, like I'm not gonna understand like China the way you do because you grew up there.
mhm,
And that's
yeah.
like your nationality as well. Like for me, like I don't really know like the customs that go into, like celebrating your national like in like a national holiday. Like I think you guys spend
Mhm.
like a week, like it's like a week long celebration for
Yeah.
like your,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like that kind of like differences that I think
Yeah.
is, yeah, so definitely of course there's like a lot of differences because we just grew up in completely different
Yeah.
contexts. I think it's very right of you not to just assume things actually, because not all like people from Malaysia, like Chinese Malaysians, speak Chinese anyway, like Mandarin or
Mhm.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Definitely not in the wrong for not knowing and not wanting
Mhm.
to assume. So
Oh, also just kind of want to follow up on one of your comments earlier. I think, yeah, we grew up really differently, but I think something that definitely holds really true is I think we have a lot of like historical things that come in, kind of what we said about like customs or like
mm-hmm.
holiday we celebrate. I think like, despite the national holiday, of course, but just like traditional Chinese holidays like
Yes.
Qingming or for
Yes.
example, those I think are like pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely something that, I appreciated being able to talk to to like about as well. Like I was like, oh yeah, you get
Mm,
it too.
yeah.
A lot of Chinese Malaysians, like not a lot, like a good amount of Chinese Malaysians in Malaysia who are more like Chinese ed, so like Chinese educated, and like they still consume like mostly like Chinese media, whether that be like from Hong Kong or Taiwanese like 偶像剧 or something, and like all
Yeah.
those shows and everything like that. So like they do have, I wouldn't say reverence, but like they definitely do view China and Chinese government and its politics to be like, they still like hold them and like quite see them in good light. No,
Hmm.
so yeah, like I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I'm like
That's actually
generalizing.
really interesting. Okay, before that, like I was just thinking about one thing. So we had a lot of reality shows. I think that's the right term in
Mm-hmm.
China, and they have more trainees or so. Like for example, I think her name is in Chinese is Tai Joy, and she's
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
Malaysia.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
know who she
and
is.
she got really popular in China in one of those reality shows, and yeah, she's one.
She's like
She's pretty
really
new.
pretty.
Yeah, she's really pretty. I feel bad for her because I think she got like
Yeah,
criticized. Because I think she
yeah.
got married. She got married
Mm-hmm,
very
mm-hmm,
young, and she
mm-hmm.
divorced, and people
Yes,
were
yes,
like
yes. Yeah,
kind of
a
trash
lot of
talking all
haters.
that.
Yeah,
A lot of haters, but I was like, she looks really pretty. Like,
yeah.
and
She's like
yeah,
really sweet, like
yeah,
facial expressions as well.
yeah. She does have that cute, like
Yeah.
Anywho, but I don't know. Maybe I just never noticed before. I think there were some like Malaysian, like Chinese Malaysian celebrities before, but I think recently there has been more
Mm-hmm.
people like coming to those reality shows, but also not just from Malaysia. I think they just had a boys group reality show and that Chinese from Japan and
Mm-hmm.
Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
which like was not really common a couple
Yeah.
years ago. So
Yeah, I'm glad to
anywho,
hear that. More diverse-ish kind of like cast and stuff too. But
yeah.
the thing with, okay, not to criticize anyone directly like Tai Zoe or like anyone else, but like the thing
Hmm.
is I always feel like maybe it's also the show producers,
Hmm.
it's that a lot, like if they want to be on those shows, they kind of have to present themselves basically as someone who's very much in tune with customs from China. And so they don't really get a lot of opportunities to showcase their own like Malaysian culture anyway. So it's not really like that much of a
Hmm.
difference anyway. Yeah, but
Yeah.
like certain celebrities, like there's this dude, I don't know, I forgot his name. Oh yeah, Huang Mingzi, do you know that guy? He like really wanted to promote like Malaysian culture like stuff, but he's considered like really controversial. I don't
Okay.
know, maybe that just kind of makes people wary of being like him, so they have to keep their image more just like, I don't know, not culturally,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I don't know the singer, but I kind of get like what I definitely think because I'm just thinking back, like for example, like Taipei, and I think in the show, like she definitely, she was trying really hard to like speak proper Mandarin, even though she might still have an accent, but she was
Mm-hmm.
trying really hard, and then but I also like just trying to like simulate into the Chinese culture, like the kind of the trends, because I think her ultimate goal is to like work in
Yep.
mainland. So like she
Yep.
was trying to. This is like I feel like kind of like a stepping stone for them, like getting more fame, and then like they can start taking jobs in mainland. Yeah,
Totally.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so I can definitely see where you're coming from, and I've seen similar because I was just watching the boyfriend show like about trainees from Japan, and it's very clear that like they definitely wasn't, they barely sing any Japanese songs. I think all their show, but also I think some of them were Japanese American or something. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I definitely think they were trying to like kind of adopt to the Chinese culture rather than like promoting their own country. But just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I never thought about it. This is a really interesting point.
It definitely
Yeah,
makes sense though. Like I totally get
yeah.
where they're coming from, and I don't know what happens behind the camera either. And I do totally agree. Like I'm not trying to be mean, but it's always funny when you hear like Malaysian Chinese speak Mandarin in like a more proper way, because it's like, haha, I know you don't speak like that to your family probably.
I think the Malaysian version of Mandarin is pretty similar to Singaporean
Mm-mm.
Chinese. I know it's like similar, not the same exactly, but
Mm.
I know like a lot of people think it's really cute. Yeah, I don't. I consider myself pretty proper Mandarin,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
apparently
yeah.
I don't.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of my friends, like Chinese friends, think that I speak like ABC, which I was like, this is pretty ridiculous. I really don't think I do, but I thought my Mandarin was pretty proper. Apparently not. So
Yeah, no, actually, I feel like like some of my friends pointed this out just the other day, that like they actually dislike the way Malaysian Chinese speak Chinese. But honestly, like for me, I think it's sort of like become a vernacular of its own, right? Like the way like we speak. It's like
mhm.
we have our own slangs, we mix it up with like other languages and stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we have like our own vocabulary that's
yeah, for sure.
distinct. So like I feel like it's not right to just say that, oh, it's like a no standard version of like Mandarin, because it just doesn't sound proper. Like I feel like should be more
Yeah,
pride in that, okay, friends?
I 100% agree, and I think maybe like dialect's a little bit different from Mandarin, but one thing I really regret, like now growing up, is like not be able to like speak fluent Chinese because
Mm-hmm.
like obviously like growing up like my school was very like prioritized like everybody speak Mandarin and my dad wasn't from Shanghai originally so his Chinese was also not great so we like speak Mandarin at home like my mom would speak Chinese to me and I'll respond in Mandarin and now that I'm older, I was like, oh my gosh, like it would be so cool. Not just cool, but I think just kind of know like your local dialects will be really great. Like if you speak with somebody like who was from the same hometown, like like you have
Yeah,
another connection. So I
definitely.
definitely agree. I think it's actually really cool that there's so many different like accents of Mandarin. I don't think anybody should unless you want to be, I don't know, TV show host or
Right.
some
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
occupation when it's required to have proper Mandarin. Otherwise, I absolutely see why not having like accents. I think that's what makes you stand out a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
just a side note there.
Yeah, but do you think that
Yeah.
most people also think the way you do, or do you think like are there like actually a lot of people in China who like like really hold a lot of I don't know, like they really want people to speak like properly, like proper Mandarin,
Mm,
Or is there, because in Malaysia, like when I was growing up, like people were like actually frown upon like dialects and stuff. So I don't know if it's like the same case for China.
I would just say this was kind of interesting. So I think back in my parents' generation, like a lot of people, like everybody kind of speak dialects. Like it
Mm,
was really cool, or actually like consider like you're, I don't know, like you're educated when you can
mm,
speak really proper Mandarin, because a lot of people couldn't, like a lot of people just speak dialects. And that's when the government really pushed like everybody like need to learn how to speak Mandarin well, because it is true, because mainland China is it's huge. So like if everybody
mm,
just speak dialects, nobody's able to understand one another. I think
mm,
kind of like in my generation, like by then, like it's very common just for everybody to like speak Mandarin. It doesn't have to be like pretty proper, but I would say a lot of people in my generation speak pretty proper Mandarin. But then I guess recently the government have found that, oh, actually like the younger generation don't know how to speak dialects anymore, especially like kids in bigger cities. Like I
right.
think Shanghai is one example. Some cities are better than the others. But so they're kind of like reverse that policy a little bit. So I think my cousins who are like 10 years old, younger than me, like they are actually like learning to speak dialect a little bit
That's
more.
so
Like
interesting.
yeah, yeah. But it's really interesting. And I also think it's sort of family by family situation. I think some families very much just like you have to speak
Mm.
dialects, or they're really, which I think is great. Like I really wish my mom like pushed harder on this. I think she can just half give up. She's like
Yeah, yeah. No,
you're
I
gonna,
think
yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely do think it dialects and stuff can help. Like it's language in general, like I talked about in like the last podcast episode. Everyone should listen to it. But it really can help you feel more connected to someone. These days my boss keeps
Mhm.
speaking Cantonese to me and I like literally don't understand her, but she keeps speaking it to me anyway.
But
But
wow.
I sometimes like just don't feel like I'm qualified enough to speak Mandarin like to people from China like when we go and order food. I remember because the first time I went there I was with like other Malaysian people and they like ordered in Chinese and then like the owner was like so impressed. They were like, "Oh, where are you guys from?" And then like they were like, "Oh, Malaysia." And I remember they were saying stuff like, "Wow, like 大马的人 like know how to speak like Mandarin too. Wow." Like they were like so impressed. So like every time I go there, I'm like, oh, maybe I should like order in Mandarin or something, and maybe like they'll be like, wow. But then I'm like, oh, but what if I like sound really weird to them though? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just like a whole big thing, and I'm just like, oh, never mind. I'll just order the chili oil noodles, please. Thank you.
Honestly, I think it's so funny. Like, we don't, I think I've never really had a full-on Chinese like conversation with you. So
Yeah.
I maybe I will take credit in it. But again, I don't know. I think there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, because technically it's not your first language, right? Because
I would call it like my mother tongue.
yeah. Another thing I think is really interesting is like whenever you talk to your family,
Yeah.
I haven't met like that many
Yeah.
family who are like bilingual,
Mm.
but I love how you guys like mix
Yeah.
Mandarin, Malay, and English perfectly. It just like
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like it's like three languages or two languages in one sentence, but it would make perfect sense.
You know, going back to kind of like Chinese perception of like overseas Chinese,
Mhm.
do you think most, like from your perception, like do you think
Mhm.
most people from China would kind of like accept in a way, but like kind of view people like overseas Chinese as culturally the same? Do most people kind of see them as like, oh yeah, we share the same culture, or they're like, oh no, like they're different, you know?
I would say most people would think they're the same, and
Mm-hmm.
I actually think a lot of people appreciate, because some people, a lot of like Chinese who live overseas actually like I think identify with their Chinese like heritage more sometimes, more so
Mm-hmm.
than people who live in the country. So I think most people, and again, I guess speaking for myself, I think
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about like, oh, like we're culturally different or something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it might be because when like the diaspora and stuff, they probably do have stronger not stronger, but like more extravagant celebrations, probably because, you know, like they want to celebrate that culture, or it's like one of like the only things they can sort of hold on to. Like I discussed in like my previous episode, it's like I think one of the reasons why people are so defensive about, you know, speaking the Chinese language and keeping those Chinese schools alive is because they, I don't know, it's like one of the only things that they can really hold on to, maybe at this point, something they want to
Yeah.
perpetuate. Like for my family, my, like I mentioned just now, like my grandma has probably been here for a while now because, you know, she, they grew up, like I don't know, like I don't think she knows anything about her side of like the ancestry and stuff, but I'm pretty sure my dad's side came maybe 19th century, maybe. I think because I'm pretty sure like another wave of immigration happened during like British colonization, probably because they needed like workers and stuff, and then people from southern part of China who weren't doing so well because of, you know, land issues and things like that. Like imagine if I'm just giving you all the wrong info. But no, I'm pretty
Like,
sure this is what
double
happened.
check.
Yeah, but yeah, like my dad always talks about, I think it's his great grandfather, I think. So it's like my great great grandfather, but like he came down, like I don't know, like would you say that I'm like fluent in Mandarin to you, or do you think it's like questionable?
I mean, first of all, like I haven't really heard
Yeah,
you
we
like,
don't really speak.
because I
It's
feel
just
like,
awkward. Yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely think you're fluent, but it's definitely different. I think you definitely like, I wouldn't say like accent, I don't know. I'm just like, it's definitely different, but I can definitely understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Do you have any other questions, comments about how you view, you know, Malaysian Chinese or any other Chinese diaspora around the world?
Not really. I guess I never really thought about that, really.
No, yeah, of course.
I think for everybody's experience different because I remember when I first came to the US, like I've met, so they're like Chinese Americans. I've met Chinese Americans who like speak no Chinese whatsoever. Like their family don't speak any Chinese. They just are not like speaking English in the household. But then I also had Chinese Americans who can speak very fluent Chinese, like Mandarin, and also like dialect. So I always find it really like interesting just seeing like kind of how like they're both like second like generations. Like they never really grew up in China. Like some of them might have grew up in China when they're really little and then like came back to the US or but as a Chinese I thought it was like interesting to see like how everybody like see their identities and also like speak their languages. But yeah, I don't know. I just that's kind of like my little hot take.
Yeah. No, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure you can only speak for yourself, and also because like you went for, you know, like in high school you did like transfer to the US and everything. But
Yeah.
in Chinese school in China, like is there any lessons on the kind of like immigration of Chinese people? I mean, like I guess it doesn't really
I think
pertain to education, but
we definitely talked about it at one point in history, like and different like history courses. I like it's pretty like broad. Like we definitely did like dig deeper into it, but like we knew like kind of like the immigration move to like the U.S. was like the factories, workers, all that. But yeah, I kind of wish that like I learned more when I was younger. 'Cause that maybe would help me like better understand like kind of like because yeah, like I think living abroad, like I think for you, like Chinese identity is definitely different. Kind of how I view myself, my Chinese identity. So yeah, we definitely learned about it in history, but maybe like pretty broad and yeah. Okay, yeah. I have a quick question for you. So like, how do you see like when you're interact with like I guess Chinese from mainland? Like, what do you have any perceptions about us, or like, what do you think we're like pretty similar? What's your hot take?
yeah, for sure. I think I like growing up, I probably just assumed that like most of the things were like the same, and then I watched like some shows, but I feel like most of them were like from Taiwan and stuff. Reality shows like 星光大道. I don't know if you know that show, but it's like
Yeah,
a
I
singing
know.
competition. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
So
also love that. Yeah.
yeah, but I think, I didn't really think that much of like the differences growing up because I was just like, oh yeah, because like I told you, like I saw myself as pretty much like Chinese, like that was like the way I would introduce myself to people or like I would kind of
Mhm.
identify myself as. So
Yeah.
that was like I didn't really see a lot of differences, but then like definitely after I studied in the States and stuff, I would be like, oh yeah, we have a lot of like this cultural like nuances and stuff like that. We
Mhm.
have these differences and also these similarities. And like those differences should be celebrated as well. It's what makes us, unique. But there's a lot of like those similar holidays and customs and maybe even like mindsets and stuff that we have in similar. But actually, speaking of stereotypes, though, it's like I think
Mhm.
one of the things because when I went to college in Malaysia, there were like some transfer students from China. Definitely at the time, like one of like the stereotypes was like, oh, like they only like keep to themselves, or
Mhm.
they're really rich. They're all like so rich, like. I
They're
remember
wearing those
when,
Gucci
yeah,
bells.
like I remember one of the first times like I went shopping at the Mizzou store
Mhm.
with our
Yeah.
mutual friend that like actually introduced us, and she
Oh,
like was
okay.
literally just like picking out like those like Nike, Adidas merch, and
Yeah.
like she didn't even care about the price, and I was like so impressed. I was like, oh my god, I guess it must be true that like like they're all like so rich, they don't care about like the prices. But then like both of us
Yeah.
have the same clearance Mizzou sweatshirt, so
I
I was like, okay, yeah,
know that
whatever.
was the first. We have this. Well, it's champ. Is it champion? I think
Yeah, it is
it's
champion
branded.
though. Yeah, but I did pick it up from the clearance section, so
I did too. I was like, gotta snatch that.
I know. I was like, yes, that one's definitely it. And I know we like
Yeah.
clash all the time. We're like wearing the same shirt, but yeah, I love that
Yeah,
for us.
but
So.
for sure, I definitely don't find that stereotype. Actually, like, I'm one of the person who are kind of, like, I don't know. I just don't think that it's necessary for us to own, like, luxury things at our age. But again, this is an unpopular opinion because I have a lot of friends who, like, study in China and they definitely, like, wear a lot of, like, luxury. Kind of that's the trends going on there. So, yeah, that's probably one of the things I don't really like about that stereotype, but that's pretty true. I definitely have a lot of friends who like to wear them. There's nothing wrong with it, like
Mhm.
as long as you don't, yeah. But I personally I don't think I need
Yeah.
that. I'll be afraid to wear them out. I'll be like, what
Yeah.
if?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
I
wanna.
I
Yeah,
totally get that. Yeah, I think, there's definitely that kind of like
yeah.
brand consciousness kind of thing that
Mhm.
I would I see from I
Yeah.
kind of have that stereotype or impression on a lot of Chinese people, but also I think it's also because most of the people like Chinese people that do show up on like my social media and stuff are those, kind of influencer type of people who like
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
promote that
Yeah.
kind of mentality. So that's probably why.
Mhm.
That pretty much wraps up our discussions.
I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. Feeling really honored. Yeah, I don't have
I'm
anything
really
else
happy
to
you're
add.
here. Yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
of
Yeah,
course.
take care, everyone.
Bye. Okay.